Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofrumento. If you've heard any of the headlines that suggest that software development or engineering is over, well, today's guest and fellow entrepreneur is really going to dispel so much of that, because this is someone who is incredibly talented. And when you take his development and software talents and you apply it to real world problems and real world solutions, you get a very brilliant business. So I'm so excited for all of us to learn from him here today and to hear about all the cool things that he's built. Let me introduce you to him. His name is Daniel Veenkamp. Daniel is the founder of Fizzy, which is a platform reimagining how workouts are programmed, tracked, and shared in a more intelligent and collaborative way. With a background as a software engineer and a deep passion for fitness, Daniel sits at the intersection of technology and performance. He's someone who doesn't just build products, he studies the problem space obsessively, asking the hard questions about how people actually train, what they truly need, and where current tools fall short. From there, he designs systems that translate real-world fitness workflows into intuitive, scalable software. Today, he's focused on building the infrastructure behind Fizzy with a long-term vision of empowering coaches and fitness professionals to better manage and elevate their clients' training. We're all going to learn so much from him today. I'm so excited about this one. Let's dive straight into my interview with Daniel Veenkamp. All right, Daniel, I am so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Brian. Happy to be here.
Yes. Daniel, you and I were geeking out off air. We had to hit record to talk about the good stuff. So before we start geeking out about all things Fizzy and everything else that you're up to, take us beyond the bio. Who's Daniel? How'd you start doing all these cool things?
Oh, I don't know if I can do a better job than you did there. But yeah, so I've been a software engineer for over 10 years at this point. I've been in a number of different industries, from finance to medical, to education, and now to fitness. And I started off with Fizzy with a pretty, I'll say, common story when it comes to entrepreneurs, or at least one that I hear a lot of, where it's kind of like the disgruntled employee start something different, trying to do it better. So that's honestly where Fizzy started. But yeah, mostly background as an engineer. I've always dabbled in product as well, like always interacted with designers, the entire product team, all of that, to make sure that like what I was building wasn't just going to waste my time and actually improve the product as a result of that. Yeah, I think that's about it. Yeah.
Daniel, it's so interesting to me to hear from within your world where the actual development and engineering is separate from product. Talk to us about that distinction, because I find it incredible. You obviously blend those two, which has resulted in a very incredible product inside of Fizzy that we're going to talk about a lot. But talk to us about why that distinction exists, and then, of course, why it's important to bridge that gap.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it stems from this permanent conflict, and I think it's inherent in doing business, or at least the way that software has typically been ran, where you have a separation between engineers and product, because if you give engineer all the time in the world, we'll make the best code possible, and product wants the best product possible. And so there's this like conflict that always exists. And I think it's a really good conflict, because engineers need to be pulled towards, shipping code that results in a good product. And engineers often play the opposite role, where we're trying to slow product down so that we can have a stable code base and do things the right way. And I suspect that it's because of that perpetual conflict and the tension between those two departments that they don't always get along. Not necessarily in like a interpersonal way, but from what are we going to do this week or this sprint or whatever you have there. I think that's where there's maybe some like, we're focused on our work and we think it's great, and then we're also focused on our work and we think it's great. So the willingness to compromise and understand the other person's perspective or other group's perspective might be what leads to that. I'm not 100% sure. That's a little more of my speculation than anything.
Well, the cool thing is that we don't have to speculate because both product and development come together inside of Fizzy. So, Daniel, for listeners who haven't seen Fizzy just yet, introduce what is Fizzy. And then what I'm always intrigued about in these entrepreneurial backstories is not how and when Fizzy started, but when that first seed was planted, because I'm sure you started thinking about it long before you ever wrote a line of code.
So Fizzy, you mentioned it really well, or you described it really well in the intro, but Fizzy is a platform for tracking your personal fitness and sharing it with other people. That's the first layer of it. The second layer of it is it's a place where coaches and fitness professionals can manage their clients, engage with social media in like a very specific and interactive way. So with Fizzy, for example, if a coach shares a post, that post is probably going to have workouts in it, and people who are following said coach can just do those workouts immediately in the app. So I think your second part was...
I want to know when the idea started, not just when Fizzy started.
Yeah. So I was working at a personal training platform company before this, and through being an engineer there, I saw a lot of what was left to be desired through the application. And not to throw shade or anything, but I just saw a lot of structural decisions that were made. I mean, the company, I think, was founded in 2016, and they did a really good job of getting the software to where it was. It hit a huge boom during COVID, like a lot of online apps did. But some of the decisions that they made totally baffled me. And so while I was working there, I started thinking about like, how could I reimagine this so that it would work in a way that would provide interesting metrics for everybody that's using the application and fill in a lot of those gaps. And so for I think 1 or 2 years that I was there, I was always trying to like re-architect it or imagine what it would take to move it into a more data-driven experience. And then I got laid off. The whole team was basically offshored. And in that time, I started building Fizzy. And at the time, when I started it, it was just, well, I'll do what they did, but with all the things that I've been thinking about and, do all the improvements. And it really evolved after that, maybe around a year ago, where I had an idea of how to introduce a social aspect to the platform. And so I think that's where Fizzy took its most interesting shape that I'm still trying to make sure I achieve.
Yeah, it's really cool hearing behind the scenes about where your head is at along this journey. And I'll confess, Daniel, you and I kind of talked about this a little bit before we hit record, that a lot of people hearing about software products launching here in 2026 are just going to think to themselves, well, cool, Daniel must have just vibe coded that. He must have just hopped onto your favorite vibe coding platform and literally just spawned it in the span of 30 minutes or less. Of course, that's not the reality, is that you are a software engineer by trade. Talk to us about that difference, because I'm starting to find that people who have your superpowers that you can actually build things, not only does it create a better product, not only does it create a product that's going to withstand pressure and a user base and growth and all of those good things, but I also find that it is a unique differentiator for you these days in a world where there is so much AI slop. Of course, that is a buzzword these days. What's your take on the difference and why it's so important to still have software engineers pushing the envelope there?
Yeah, so there's a number of things that come to mind immediately. The first is the obvious security issues that exist. I mean, I saw a story, I think it was last week, or yeah, it was sometime last week, but someone who had vibe coded an app was leaking thousands of dollars in revenue per month because there were security vulnerabilities in the app where someone was able to just directly change the database, which is something that should never happen in a production system. And because of that, they were able to get free access to the pro version of whatever it was. So you have the obvious security things. If you're doing anything with sensitive data, I pity somebody who vibe coded that, because that is, in my opinion, a lawsuit waiting to happen. So there's security, which is one thing. And then there's something that's a little bit more nuanced that I really like this term called desirable difficulty. And what it means is, yes, writing software is difficult, and thinking about a problem for a long enough period of time is not a pleasant thing to do. But the result that it yields is that, for me, for example, I can walk through the entire application and explain in depth what will happen at any given junction, right? I can tell you what happens if I hit this button after doing this or this. And so the depth of understanding that I have with my application is vastly greater than if I had vibe coded it. If I vibe coded it, I'm actually making assumptions about what the app would do. I don't know for sure, because the whole point of vibe coding is you don't even check the code. You just say, does it do what I tell it to do? And that's something that I was never able to get behind. So there's that, just my own personal understanding of the software, which helps me make better decisions as I move on. And then lastly, I think there's a level of intentionality that you can feel. It's almost like a texture of the software, where I spend a lot of time, way too much time, laboring over how do I position these things on the screen? How do I make sure that when someone's in the gym doing a workout, how can I make it as fast as possible for them to accomplish what they need to do? No one wants to use my software, right? What they want is something that tracks their workouts and allows them to continue to see progress in their fitness journey. So how do I get as out of their way as possible? And that doesn't come from just, let me spawn this thing in 3 days and see what happens. It's, this has taken me over a year to get it where it has, and it's gone through many iterations with a lot of intentional thought. And so I think there's a really palpable level of intentionality that you feel when you use software that's been written well.
So well said. I'm so appreciative of you bringing those thoughts here, Daniel, because I will say in Q2 of 2026, I don't think we have this conversation often enough. I think that the more overarching conversation is AI is doing all these things. AI is going to replace entire industries. And it's really cool to hear someone with your experience and someone who's actually building something real and incredible and impactful, your vantage point on it. It's super valuable. And I want to go deeper into the world of intentionality. I'm glad you used that word, because the more you were answering that question, that's all that I kept coming back to, is there's so much more intention. I've vibe coded things. There's no intention. I hope my prompt is right, and then I make tweaks from there. But you're right. I have no idea what happens behind the scenes. And then hearing how Fizzy has been an iterative and evolutionary process for it to get to the point where it is today. And of course, that's going to be a never-ending journey that you're on with Fizzy. With that in mind, where was your head strategically when it came to, I guess I'll lean on that term that we all hear from the software world, of MVP? Was there a barometer where you said, this is my minimum viable product, I'm going to get this into the marketplace? Was there an intentional feature roadmap that you said, okay, we're just going to launch today and here's what I'm going to do? What did that look like to actually get Fizzy off the ground?
That was actually really challenging. As an engineer by trade, we have this term in the industry. I don't think it's used too often anymore, but it was a little pejorative. And it was a duct tape engineer, which meant you just do whatever you can to make the plane fly with duct tape. I am the opposite of that. And if given enough time, and let's say I had infinite money and infinite time, I would do everything I could to make the code perfect, just for the sake of code, because I think it's really fun. So the problem that I ran into was actually, I have something that's workable and I think it's pretty good, but it's not perfect. And so for me, a big stress was actually, when do I just rip the Band-Aid off and say this is in production, so that it can start getting, more traffic outside of the beta users that I had. And so that came down to a couple decisions. The first was, I needed to make sure that I had a website in place. So there's the web app, which hosts all the things that you can actually do. But yeah, I'm an engineer, not really a marketing guy. So I hadn't even thought of what to do for how to market the thing. So I had this contract with a local company in Bend, Oregon. Shout out Three Pines. They do great work. And so I contracted with them to get branding guides or a branding guideline and a website like mock-up built. And so once I put that in place, then I was able to integrate with Stripe for the payment platform. And so once I had those two things in place, and I did like one last round of testing to make sure that everything wasn't just going to explode, I was able to migrate the dev infrastructure into the prod environment, and yeah, we were off and running. But yeah, it was really tough to be like, yes, this is actually good enough to get actual feedback. I'm scared, but it's fine.
Daniel, obviously we've been focusing on the technical side of this journey, but it is equally fun to hear about the business side of it as well, teasing about the branding, the marketing, all of those. You obviously are not just the technical founder of Fizzy, you are also just the founder of Fizzy. You've got to wear all the hats. What has the other side of the coin been like from you, aside from the technical stuff? How do you intentionally and strategically carve out time to think about those things? And when you do carve out those things, what are the questions on your mind in those sessions?
Yeah, so the business side is a lot more terrifying to me. I'm a little harsh with myself. I call myself woefully inept at it. That's probably too much, but honestly, the business decisions really stem from where the product roadmap is. So when I get new features out, so for example, a big push for me right now is getting the coach app into a production state to where people can use it. It's close, and there's stuff coming with that, but it's always driven from where I'm at with the product and what do I need to build next, as opposed to trying to sell something that doesn't quite exist yet. Like that's usually the rub that I have is it may be slower. I may not be getting enough hype built around Fizzy. And to me, that's okay, because when I eventually do release something, it's going to be something of quality, and that first impression is hopefully good. So that's where really the product decisions and everything come from. It's related to where I'm at in the business, or the engineering side of things, like where the product is at. And for figuring out what to build next, since it's just me, I really look for what's the next most important thing that's going to have an oversized impact on the app. So I can spend, Fizzy works really well with tracking a bunch of niche exercises. As a rock climber, finding an app that does good rock climbing training is kind of tough, but finding an app that does good rock climbing training along with strength training and cardio, not that I do cardio, it's just near impossible. And so I could follow that process and continue building out all of these different niche activities to provide a wider offering, but that's not really where the outsized impact for Fizzy's development is right now. So that's coach, and so that's kind of where, like, how I make the product decision calculus, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and thinking about that, what I'm really intrigued by is that it seems to me like when you think about your business, community is at the heart of it, is that there's no way around that, is that is a part of Fizzy. Talk to us about that inclusion by you with regards to community, because I'm just going to throw this in there because I'm so intrigued to hear your thoughts. What I found so difficult in community-based businesses is the network effect. And so when we think about the classic Uber example, is that Uber didn't just have to get drivers, they also had to get riders. And both of those had to grow in conjunction so that drivers didn't sign up and then there were no riders, or vice versa. Obviously, you have a bit of a different network effect, because the more that I use it and my friends use it, we don't need other people on the other side providing certain things. We can all share our metrics, our workouts, all of those things together. But still, the network effect is a very difficult thing to master. How's the community portion? How did that come into your mind? And how's that prioritization with regards to how Fizzy's going to grow?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think it's actually two-pronged. So Fizzy, when I look at the value that Fizzy provides, I really think about it in terms of a really simple number, and that is how many workouts are being completed. when I have all the data, it'll be, month compared to previous months. So like January to January, not January to July, because everyone knows New Year's. So the most important thing is the number of workouts that are getting completed, because if I have 5 million people programming workouts, but no one's doing them, does it even matter? So the first step is building workouts needs to provide a lot of value for people on its own. And this is actually one of my earlier strategic decisions was I need to build a very good workout app, because getting that network effect to happen is something that I can't rely on, because there are plenty of workout apps out there. I know plenty of them have tried to make some sort of community or social thing happen, and a lot of them, in my opinion, fall flat. Fizzy might as well. Fizzy might also fall flat. I'm not entirely sure yet. We'll see what I'm able to pull out with that. But relying on the network effect alone for success with Fizzy is not something that I wanted to do. So I made sure that the workout app carried its own weight. The next part with the actual social part was driven actually from trying to figure out how to price Fizzy and how to make money off of it. And when I initially built Fizzy, or the initial rounds of it, I was just building the personal training app. And what I didn't like was the common model today is charging coaches to use the app based on the number of clients that they maintain. So personal trainer A has 5 clients, that's $20 a month. Personal trainer B has 20 clients, now that's $60 a month, so on and so forth. That always created a rub for me. And I saw a lot of what was happening at the previous company that I worked for, where coaches would play games with the number of clients that were archived, and constantly having this rotation of clients in their I think Rolodex or whatever it is. And I really hated that coaches had to do that extra workflow, and it felt like coaches are being punished for growing their business. And I wanted to do something opposite. And so I was like, okay, well, what if the value of Fizzy has always been workouts? How can I make the value related to the payment structure? And I thought I had this idea, and I don't know exactly where it came from, but it was like, what if you could just share workout? Like, what if when a coach did a workout, like, it was just available to other people? So like, yeah, it's really complicated to think about, actually, like when it happened. It's so long ago. But it all stemmed from that idea of like, how do I align the value proposition of Fizzy with workouts to the payment structure for coaches? And then that blossomed into, well, what if clients were able to pay for the app and coaches were able to pay for the app? That way I don't have to limit the amount of clients that a coach has, and they could just have as many as they want. And then there's a lot of like security questions that pop in. It's like, okay, well, I'm a coach. Most apps today do all sorts of like rigorous stuff to try to keep clients from sharing their workouts because it's the coach's property, which is super valid, right? So you don't want someone who's paying you $200 a month to do workouts with you to give workouts to their friends for free. The more I thought about that, though, I thought that might be a poor assumption, because realistically, once something's on the internet, everybody has access to it that wants it. Maybe not everybody has access to it, but it's pretty free to give or like break down those privacy boundaries. For example, like I've had personal trainers in the past, and I have friends. And so when I would go to the gym, I would say, hey, do you want to try this workout? And so my friends would get the workout for free. People can take screenshots of it. A lot of these apps will shut down access to your data as a client once you've been kind of pushed through the system and, like I said, archived or whatever the system employs. So you lose access to your training data, and I didn't like that either. So I thought, well, what if I just stopped with the boundaries between who can see what workouts? And what that led to was like, well, what if everybody could do every workout that was on Fizzy? Like, that's a pretty cool idea. And it has all those social effects where, like, let's say you want an accountability group and you want your friends to see, to hold you accountable, and they can see your workouts and give you a thumbs up or, whatever celebration you need. That was kind of the next evolution of it, kind of as like a logical step. And then it became like, well, what if, since these coaches are going to be bringing clients onto the app, what if I just paid coaches for the workouts that their clients do? That creates this incentive structure where coaches can have recurring revenue by these clients that maybe they don't even work with anymore, but they still get a cut from the workouts that they're doing. And then when their friends do those workouts, they get a cut from those workouts and all the viral things. So I think that's kind of the whole evolution of the thing.
Yeah, and it's really cool hearing the way you've thought about that and how you arrived at that point, Daniel. To me, it really reveals something that I'm going to steal this quote that I frequently reference from the startup world, where someone once said, you're always building two businesses simultaneously, the business that you have today and the business that you're going to have 5 years from now. It seems to me like you're really successful at doing a hybrid of the two, is making sure that your business today sets up your business 5 years from now. And obviously that plays into the architecture of your system. It plays into the way that you view your business. Talk to us about that long-term strategic thinking, because not only have you and I thrown a little bit of shade at, applying AI to everything and vibe coding and all of that, but I also want to throw some shade at the fact that all of us are guilty these days of being impatient. It seems to me like you successfully implement patience into the way you develop, the way that you build, and the way that you long-term strategize your business as well as the product.
I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head. I didn't feel like I had patience because I was, while I was building the product initially, I was itching so hard to get it into production and just start making money with it. And then a year later, I realized I hadn't done it yet. And I was just like trying to find the right time to do it. And then I was talking with my wife and I was like, I think I can actually call myself patient now. But I think a big part of it for me was figuring out that I don't want to create Fizzy to be something that relies on like the hype or the growth that you expect out of tech companies these days. It's been for a long time, but valuations of tech companies tend to rely on how fast they're growing. And to me, that just doesn't always make sense. Like, I understand it. But I think if I'm providing enough value and I'm able to generate revenue over time and not churn customers, to me, that's a better outcome. That's kind of what I want. I want people to look at Fizzy and feel like it's getting, the platform itself is getting better for the sake of the platform getting better, as opposed to, just trying to get more customers and make more money and squeeze everything. I'm not a fan of the way private equity runs companies. I'll say that flatly. And so the churn and burn mindset just is not my thing. As a result of all of that, I think patience is actually necessary, because it's just a longer path. If I wanted to, I could probably say Fizzy uses AI and go get investor money and, burn through it and whatever. But it's just not the way I want to do things. And so I think patience is kind of forced into the equation with that, which has been trying at times, but honestly, I like the results that it has.
Yeah, really well said, Daniel. As someone else who has always avoided that urge to, I'm going to put it in air quotes because I don't believe that there's any easy way, but a lot of times I think to myself, yeah, we can just put a really sexy sales pitch together and start raising money for a bunch of these things, but I've avoided that, and I'm really grateful to hear the mindset of fellow entrepreneurs like you who have avoided those calls, and you're building something that is going to be around for a heck of a long time. It's why I like to believe, I'm going to toot my own horn for a quick second here, that we have survived 1,400 plus episodes here on the air, bringing valuable conversations to wantrepreneurs and entrepreneurs all over the world, is because we haven't looked to be a flash in the pan. And so many podcasts have come and gone. 50% of shows never make it past episode 25. So Daniel, I'm a big fan of what it is that you're building and how you're building in that mindset. And I'm really excited to see how you answer this final question. It's the only question that I ask at the end of every episode. And that is, what's your best piece of advice for listeners? Knowing that we're being listened to by both wantrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their own growth journeys, what's that one thing you want to leave them with today?
Right now, I would say have patience and resist the urge to vibe code. For proof of concepts, go for it. I totally respect that, and it does have its place. But for something that's going to be lasting and not problematic in the future, just have diligence and try to fight the urge to do that. I think it's just making things worse.
Yes, and a strong emphasis on lasting there. I think that is such a key takeaway from so many points of our conversation today, Daniel, is flash in the pan, any and all of us. That's the cool thing about being alive in 2026. I can make anything within the next 30 minutes, but is it going to be lasting? Absolutely not. Probably the first time a user tries to log in, first error message, pretty much guaranteed in the world of today's vibe coding. So Daniel, I'm such a big fan of all the things that you're doing with Fizzy. I'm really excited for listeners to go check it out themselves. Why? Because it is ready for all of us to sign up. You are going to fall in love with how intentionally Daniel has created this entire platform and this entire system and this entire solution for all of us. And something else that's not so easy, fitness. There's a lot of quick gimmicks in the fitness world, but again, Daniel is charting a path that helps us to sustain these efforts. So Daniel, for listeners who want to find Fizzy and all the cool stuff that you're up to, drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
Yeah, the best place would be physie.io, physie.io. That's where you can find the information about the site and a link to sign up for it. From there, app.physie.io is the home. You can find me at LinkedIn, but yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yes, and listeners, you already know we're dropping all of those links down below in the show notes, no matter where it is that you're tuning into today's episode, so do not be shy to check those out. Also, just a bit of a spoiler alert is that Daniel, from time to time on his LinkedIn, he has posted coupon codes, so if you want to be one of those users that jump straight in, definitely also check out Daniel's personal LinkedIn. We're also linking to that directly down below. So, Daniel, on behalf of myself and all the listeners, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thanks so much, Brian.